Hello and welcome back to Underlab. It's time for another really interesting Deltarune theory. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Sophronius, Kaela and Haverock for discussing some of the ideas that will appear in this video. So let's get straight to the main question. How can Deltarune be a prequel? Just in case you didn't know, a prequel is the opposite of a sequel. It gets made after the first game, but the story actually takes place before. Think of what happened with Star Wars. Actually, maybe not, as I think most people are actually going to like Deltarune. Unless you have no idea what Deltarune is, you're probably aware by now that even though many of the same characters from Undertale make an appearance, it's actually set in an alternate world. You may wish to say in that case then that surely it doesn't take place before or after Undertale, as it has its own continuity. That may be true, but I'm still not crossing out the possibility that this game will have some sort of tangible effect on the story of the first, even if all it does is lay the foundations for it. Basically, the idea of this game taking place before Undertale is relevant and will significantly affect the story. You've just got to hear me out. So let's deal with the elephant in the room. I assume just about everyone, myself included, assumed this game took place immediately after Undertale and was set in the same universe. While the latter is quickly revealed to not be true, as we're called Chris, not Frisk, that still doesn't rule out the fact that this is surely what many of us expected the pacifist ending of Undertale to result in. Monsters are living peacefully on the surface, and the underground is surely nothing but a hazy memory. But hold on, we're getting ahead of ourselves. Who says the underground was ever a thing to begin with in this world? We have to consider the possibility that things are seriously warped compared to our expectations within this game. As a matter of fact, I don't recall a single reference to the underground throughout the whole game. That might not seem that strange to you, but it could very well be an intentional detail by Toby. You'd think at least someone would say thank you for freeing us or reminisce over the old days. In this world, we're also told a different legend, one of darkness and lightness. What exactly darkness and lightness are still isn't completely clear, but it seems fairly certain that one lives underground and the other on the surface. This is a direct parallel to what happened to monsters in Undertale, but we have to consider that Susie is considered a lightner in this story, and she's a monster. Things are a lot more complicated this time around. So, how does this have any bearing on whether the game is a prequel? Well, two things. If Undertale and Deltarune run parallel, it'd be important to determine if one game is ahead of the other. However, the second and more interesting possibility is that Deltarune is a story so devoid from Undertale that the only way it could affect the story is if it was actually setting the stage for the other game. I can't imagine any of this makes much sense yet, but let's keep going for now and look at all the interesting details. It's worth considering that the world of Deltarune could never become Undertale unless it was completely changed from the ground up. Alphys doesn't know Undyne, Metaton isn't famous, and Gaster is dead. Most importantly, of course, is the fact they're all living on the surface. The story of Deltarune just doesn't seem to sync up well to Undertale's, which is pretty intriguing, seeing how a certain clown monster mentioned a city called Synchronicity while rambling on about someone called Susie in the first game. Then of course there's the name of the game, Deltarune. Maybe Toby just thought it was cute to name the game that, considering the Deltarune featured prominently in the first game and is also an anagram of Undertale. However, I really do doubt that. I think it has distinctive meaning within this game, and at first it really isn't too obvious. The prophecy of the Deltarune states that an angel who has seen the surface will make the underground go empty. We know this prophecy is ancient, so ancient in fact that we see monsters in the introduction to Undertale wearing the Deltarune, while they lived on the surface. Do you see the problem here? The monsters had a prophecy predicting something that makes little to no sense, at least until they were sealed underground. You may argue that it's a prophecy, so it doesn't have to make that much sense. But surely you agree it's rather odd that monsters were walking about on the surface with the knowledge that one day the underground would go empty. Something is completely amiss here, and though we could write it all off as not meaning much or being a simple plot hole, a much more interesting alternative is that the game Deltarune is ultimately going to provide an explanation as to how this prophecy was ever even thought of. We know that something more is going on behind the scenes, perhaps manipulated by Gaster or Chara. Our character seems to tear out their own soul at the end of the game, and someone tells us to create a vessel, which is then promptly discarded at the beginning of the game. While it's hard to say with certainty what impact these characters are having on the story, we know they're not ones for respecting the boundaries between space and time. It's entirely plausible that one or both of them have hopped over from Undertale to this game, or when you think about it, maybe it's the other way around. Maybe this game will explain the nature of Gaster's mysterious experiment and get to the root of what Chara really is. Gaster's influence is undeniable within this game. We can call our cell phone in the dark world and hear the bizarre, strange noise we heard all those years ago in Entry 17, a direct message written by Gaster. Not only that, but within town you can head south to encounter a mysterious set of doors that play this sound just slowed down by 500%. What role exactly is Gaster playing in all of this? Is he benevolent or is he malicious? Well, we can't say with certainty, but of the two, I'd still want Gaster over Chara. Chara played a similar stunt on us towards the end of the genocide path when they assumed total control over our game. This is a massive theme in Deltarune where, completely unlike the first, we aren't really allowed to make choices, and this idea is touched upon in many different ways. Not only are we directly told that at the beginning of the game, but we can't go on a true genocide run, and how many times does Susie cut us off in the middle of trying to make a choice? It's very reminiscent of what happens in Undertale post-genocide, as we're never really allowed to make a choice again without editing the game's files, as Chara will always come back to haunt us. In this respect, Gaster and Chara may be polar opposites. Chara is trying to control the world, whereas Gaster is trying to free us. Gaster's motives may be more complicated than that, but I doubt he's working with Chara, who clearly doesn't seem to have any compassion for monster kind and humanity. He's definitely somewhere within Deltarune, whether we can see him or not. Remember, in the first game, he was shattered across space and time. It's quite plausible that the Gaster of this universe is attempting an experiment of his own, one which may yield different results that will be very, very interesting. To tie things back into the prophecy of the Deltarune, he may very well realise the terrible control Chara has over the game Deltarune. He may be trying to warn other worlds of this evil force, which explains the nature of his strange experiments. One way of doing this would be to establish the legend of the Deltarune, to give monsters hope even in the most unfortunate of timelines. Still, that's just an explanation for something we can't really make sense of yet. It's time to delve into what is surely the most interesting element this theory covers that could change the way you look at both games forever. And of course it all comes back to half the internet's favourite skeleton, Sans. Sans is a walking enigma who clearly plays a part in all of this, but it's never been made very clear. What we do know about Sans is he knows a thing or two about time travel, as proven by how he respects time travellers in the first game enough to give them a key to his room. He has some connection to Gaster, as proven by his use of a weapon called the Gaster Blaster. And finally, the part you knew was coming, there's his workshop, which has many unexplained mysteries. Until now, as I think we finally have an answer. He has a picture of 3 people smiling, and it simply says don't forget. People have speculated endlessly about who these 3 are, and I think the most popular theory has often been that it's Sans, Papyrus and Gaster, but that doesn't really make sense. Why would you not be able to tell? Why would it not say it's Sans, Papyrus and someone you don't recognise? But then look at Deltarune, a game hinging on the concept of 3 characters. Don't you think it's very likely that the 3 smiling faces Sans doesn't want to forget are those of Chris, Susie and Rousey? There's also the incredibly bizarre detail of the sheriff's badge. People have suggested everything from this meaning he's a time cop to being the Franklin badge from Earthbound, but I think we can all agree it's probably neither of those. Here's what I think it really is, and I think you might agree. In Deltarune, there's a real police department. In Undertale, we had knights and guards. Where else would he get a sheriff's badge but from the police in Deltarune? I don't know why he'd have that specifically, but note how it's something we can explain as existing in Deltarune, but not in Undertale. I believe without a doubt that the Sans we meet in Undertale is the same one we meet in Deltarune. Already, one of us knows too much. If you try to greet him as a friend, he reacts oddly as it's your first time meeting him. It seems quite likely that he'll get to know us in Deltarune, and we may even be friends by the end of it. So without a doubt, Deltarune is taking place before Undertale, at least based on the chronology of Sans, and Sans seems to be one of the few consistent things we can actually depend upon between timelines. It seems very credible that he has some way of switching between worlds, likely using that interdimensional door we see that just so happens to be the same one as the one to his bedroom. So it seems that things have gotten really confusing. Deltarune is definitely in the past, at least for one character, but we can't be so sure about everyone else. Can we say with certainty then that Deltarune is a prequel? Well, I feel this is worth considering. In Toby's extended text post on the game, he explained how nothing we do in Deltarune is going to affect the characters of Undertale. It really got me thinking, as what really is the point in an alternate world so similar, yet so different to Undertale's? Then it dawned on me, it may not have any effect on the characters in Undertale because Deltarune is going to directly result in the creation of the world in the first game. This way the connection to Undertale isn't arbitrary and Toby is still telling the truth. Of course it's possible that he's just not saying everything, and things could be different in 1,000 ways. However, isn't this quite possibly one of the most interesting approaches he could take? The hints are there that Deltarune is going to explain some of the questions about the past in Undertale, such as those relating to Gaster and Chara, and keep in mind these are characters mostly known for doing things that we the player never even saw. It's strange to think, but so far we have no reason to believe that Deltarune takes place in the future. Consider that monsters may have even won the war in this world, and to add to that there are plenty of hints that it's set in the past. I can't say anything with certainty yet, but I hope you found these speculations interesting, and I'll see you next time.